Welcome to our cemetery trench. This year we have found lots of new graves. This burial here, we found lots of deposited bones. We deposited bones from the earlier burials at the bottom of it. This is where we have a heavily used part of the cemetery.
So this is a heavily used part of the cemetery, and we've reduced this entire area because we can't see grave cuts. So we've gone through a layer of redeposited bone charnel down into original or the latest phased interments, and we've only really been able to expose a sample of the latest phase of burials here. We've got examples of double burials of individuals being buried within the same grave at the same time, which is very interesting. It might suggest that there is some disease that's going around and afflicting people, part of the population. But yeah, it's all been great. It's been great.
Well, the main focus was to get the floor plan of this Anglo-Saxon building, and we're pretty much there. We've got a line all the way across here coming the south side all the way back up, and we're starting to get a few across there. It is even possible that we might have some a bit further underneath the road. Obviously we haven't been able to do that this year, but maybe next year we'll be able to do that. And I did a bit of research on Anglo-Saxon buildings. As everybody knows, I'm a prehistorian, so I was like, I don't even know what these buildings look like. So I decided to look them up, and it looks like we've got a pretty good example of an Anglo-Saxon building. So they're usually pretty big. I think the biggest ones are around 15 meters-ish, something like that. This one is probably around 12, assuming that we have found the far end. If not, it could be even bigger, which is awesome. We think we have two entryways, which again is quite typical of the period. On this side, we have this lovely slot that was dug by Cliff, and it shows a couple of post holes here. On this side, it's not so easy to see, but what we think we have is a threshold, basically almost like a doorstep where people were walking regularly, creating this shape. Well, but maybe next year we'll dig it out and go, oh, there are the post holes, who knows? But for now, we think that that's what we've got. We've got this lovely gravel surface as well that maybe later was put in to support that. And then on the other side here, we've got quite a few post holes, which some of you probably would have seen, but they start really wide at the top and then they're narrower at the bottom. So we think that these might be door posts, post holes for doors specifically. Now there's quite a few, and they're kind of lined up together. So it's possible that they were moving where the doorway was at some point. And actually this is the whole site. There's so many post holes just intercutting, and lots of stake holes as well. Now the stake holes might show us that the building had extra stakes put in to support all the wattle and daub, which would have lined the walls. But it's also showing us that it was used for a really, really long time. Now I was looking it up, and a lot of the people are saying that they could have used ceramic materials here, because the Romans used a lot of ceramics, but they didn't. They chose to use wood, and it's because they have felt more of a connection to the wood, and there's lots of care that's been taken to carve the buildings and just make them how they want, you know. So I think part of the reason, my theory is that part of the reason we've got so many post holes that are intercutting and moving is because they probably didn't want to just replace them. They were like, well, this is important to us, it means something to us, so we're going to just support it for a bit, and then we'll replace it eventually, and we're going to do a really good job. We're not going to rush it. So for me, though, what I think is the reason we've got so many intercutting post holes here is for that reason. We've also got our beautiful hearth, which I mentioned before. We haven't really touched it in the last week because we've been too busy doing post holes, but it's just off to the side of the building, but it is central. It's just off from the doorway, so it's sort of central, which we did find a lot of waste in this pit as well, which I told you before, but that again, it shows that they were using the space for a long time. We've had a few very nice finds from here, lots of glass. I'm sure everybody remembers the glass. In the bottom of this massive pit though, we had a piece of pottery that looked like it was quite high quality and imported, which would make sense. Lots of connections with the river. And then in one of our double post hole pits, which I can't see anymore because they've all blurred into one to me, we also had a loom weight. So not only were they bringing in beautiful pieces from elsewhere and sharing styles of pot, but they were also doing more homely things like weaving and creating stuff themselves. So it's starting to give us a really beautiful picture of what it was like to be here. And next year, I'm hoping that we can finally finish the last couple of post holes and maybe start to take it down. We've already seen glimpses of more archaeology underneath, so it's probably even more complex under there. And then we're hoping to actually spread out to the sides. Over here, we had more post holes. It looks like we've got another building going that way. So it'd be interesting to find out what that is. And over there, we started to see shapes and things, but we're still not sure what's going on. So it would be lovely to just extend that, but we'll have to see what we do next year. But that would be lovely.
So, at this end of a trench, at the northern end of trench 1, you might have been hearing over the last few days that we've been finding quite a lot of stuff. It's a lot more structural. The structures seem to be better survived than they are in the southern end of the trench. And in front of you, you can see from our leat, where James was digging and where my team has been digging in last week, we've got this nice flint wall. This all lines up, so all these flints and gravels are all the same phase of building now. And theories are changing the last day even. This, what we've been calling a road for the last 4 weeks, we think this is now the back of this flint building. So it comes underneath where I'm standing, where Frankie and Tash have taken off his occupation deposits. You can see this really nice surfacing, which has been truncated by a few later pits, but it's running back up underneath where Kevin is standing. And we think this is our mill building. So we have the whole thing pretty much, bar this corner. It's quite similar to contemporary mill buildings we've seen, but the really interesting stuff is at the moment going on in here. So not all you can see, but we've bottomed about 3/4 of this hole that we started digging, and we found the remains of timber lining. So the timber's not actually there, but it's left like this really fine silt deposit on the sides. And there's 2 quite clear posts going down. And in the bottom, Nick found a beam slot going straight across the bottom of a natural. So this, at the moment, looks like it might be a sluice gate or some control water flow in the leat itself. And this side of it, unfortunately, right underneath the bit we didn't dig, there's quite a clear and obvious pit going down into a natural at the bottom of the leat. This, well, at the moment, we've been talking about the only thing we can think it is actually the pit for the wheel for the water mill. So they've made a deeper section of the leat to fit this wheel in. It also perfectly lines up with where I'm standing, where the edge of this wall is here. And we've got us quite a clear cut in the side of the wheel of the leat for some sort of prop shaft or drive shaft to come out. It had lined up through here and helped run whatever was going on in the mill, just over here. We then have multi-phase here, as I talked about last week. The oven I was talking about, our Saxon Greggs, has been dug straight down through the foundations of this mill. So it shows the mill went out of use. They've repurposed the building for a bread oven. So they probably have used the same outside walls, but they've dug this oven through the floor. After that, the oven's gone out of use, and we have another building, this time with wooden walls, going across. One of them runs straight down here, and if you're standing near George, you should be able to see a really dark line going straight down across the oven. There's another one that seems to turn a corner and come down here. So these would have been beam slots or maybe like post-built walls. So rather than spread out posts over there, you have just post right next to each other, so it looked more like a beam slot. So next year, it's going to be more of the same, really. We're going to want to try and find the full extent of this mill house, take down these deposits stratigraphically, take out the latest buildings, work on the oven, and try and see this mill house, and obviously connect up the 2 holes in the leat.